Good morning and good evening. I know some of you are connecting here from North America and a couple from Europe. So thank you very much for joining me this morning. And before we start here, I just want to let you know that if you're connecting looking for something similar to an episode of Border Control or what really happens in Bali, then you might be in the wrong place. Not quite as exciting as that, but hopefully I can share some fairly interesting stories. A little bit about myself. So as Ray said, I'm originally from New Zealand and I'm with Vision Critical. So I've been with Vision Critical now for about 5 years. So most of that time in the client services role. So I worked throughout North America and transferred down to Sydney in February last year. So I've really been focused on that regional role for about a year and a half now, and it's been a pretty captivating year and a half, and it's flown by. So I think what I wanted to do was give everybody a bit of as Ray said, a bit of a regional perspective about what some of the skill sets and what some of the day-to-day tasks are for an Insight Community Manager, and what I think makes what's quite distinctive about this company and about the way that we service our clients. So first of all, I mean, when I joined, we really weren't global, and that's happened more recently, and Vision Critical was effectively open 24 hours. I mean, we have finance and operations, and we have our head office based in North America, and the majority of our business still comes from that area. But since then, we've opened, I think, about 7 new offices, quite a few of which are down in this region, and Sydney has really grown, and it's become what we call the center of excellence for this part of the world. So a lot of customers, the client base has really grown to about 600, and now we're servicing customers in 26 languages and connecting with about 2.5 million consumers every month. So no mean feat, and the internal workings are quite complex, and I hope that today I'll give everybody a little bit of an appreciation of that. And sorry if there's a slight delay sometimes when we transition slides, but I'll try and make that as seamless as possible. So looking specifically at the Sydney team, and we have a team down here of about 40 people now, and we service 11 markets. So I know that's obviously not the entire region, but these are the markets that we have an interest in, and when we're running communities. So that's New Zealand, Indonesia, Greater China, so Hong Kong, and interestingly also including Macau, which is quite a unique place. Japan, India, the Philippines, obviously Australia, which is still where the majority of our business comes from, and helps us to justify being located in such a nice place as Sydney, and then also Malaysia, where we're also now servicing clients. Okay, so a little bit about Vision Critical. I know a lot of you will be quite familiar with what we do and what our interests are as a business, and it's really, our head is in the community, the Insight community space primarily. We do offer other products, but it's really all about Insight communities and that ongoing engagement with businesses, customers, sometimes prospects, and any number of stakeholders. So we're really a company that tries to be in tune with the digital aesthetic. I mean, as the world is very much a digital world, we need to be where you are, and we need to effectively engage with you in any way that you want to engage with us, whether it be through the traditional online survey or whether we can get you on the go doing exercises or tasks through your mobile and even your tablet. It's very much where we need to be, and I would say particularly so in this region with places like Singapore and Hong Kong, where it's a very, very connected market, and mobile broadband is very, very high, mobile broadband penetration. So I think a lot of you would be familiar with this, but I think it's important to set the context in terms of why this role is a little bit unique, and what some of the aspects that we have to be quite focused on. And it's more because the research that we deliver and the engagement that we manage with our clients and customers through the Insight community is quite different to traditional research in that it's not linear. I mean, we don't effectively field a survey and collect insights and compile presentations back to our own clients and then move on to the next thing. What we're trying to do is foster I guess a ongoing sharing. We need to foster a community that's loyal and that want to keep coming back. They want to provide their thoughts and their insights on all kinds of topics, whether it be relevant at this time to them or whether it be relevant in the very near future. What we need to do is make sure that it's an ongoing engagement and that we share that back, so we build that sense of community because people are vested in us, I guess, in the long term. It needs to be what we think of as an authentic member experience, which in my mind means a bit of a conversation. So we ask you some questions, you give us some thoughtful answers, and it should be a fun experience for you. And then we can go back and say thank you very much, and based on everybody's thoughts and opinions, here's some of the decisions that we've decided to make. And it may not always be in line with the opinions that are given to us, but we should always have an explanation. I mean, somebody, not everybody is going to agree on every decision all of the time, but we need to give you an explanation as to why we're making these decisions and make you feel like you're a part of it. All right. So community managers, and this is the team that I function in. There's a team of about 10 of us based out of Sydney. We're quite different to researchers, so we act as the gatekeepers and we very much act as the advocates for the participants. So research will always be interested in collecting opinions, collecting insights the best way that they know how, and they're going to be very focused on the specific project and delivering the outcomes based on the objectives of the client. But we need to think, okay, is this something that's going to continue to encourage participation, or is this going to be an experience that the participants are going to feel as if they don't want to participate in, or is it going to be something that isn't in line with that whole community philosophy, and that it's a fun place for you to participate and share your opinions, and again, a place that you want to continue to come back and a little bit of a hub. So again, we always have to think with the participants in mind and think about what's best for them. We don't want to burden them at any point. So that sort of leads into, from my experience, some of the maxims that we have to keep in mind, and these are sort of the philosophies of our team when we boil them down to their most sort of basic level. So the first one is basically that silence kills. So in our mind, an Insight community should never go a single month without contact. Now, that's not to say that something like a newsletter or a piece of feedback can be that piece of contact. It doesn't have to be a complex research assignment or something. We know businesses go through planning periods, and we know businesses very often don't have an objective that's top of mind, and they're not always obviously going to be focused on their Insight community. But us as community managers need to ensure that the participants don't feel like they're being neglected, and they feel like every month there's something for them to participate in. So we have a collection of what we call engagement surveys, and very often we develop our own, just so that it could even be as simple as a 2 or 3 question survey, something a little bit of fun, so that every month there's something for the participants to focus on and to keep the community top of mind. And I guess our evidence has shown that if you do neglect the community for 1 month, or even worse 2, it's very hard to re-engage them, and there'll be a lot of your loyal members that will have lost interest, and it's very hard to re-engage them. The second one is to keep your activities short and sweet. So we always ask, if your survey is going to be over 10 minutes, we consider that too long. Appreciating that every now and then there will have to be something. There'll be more of an involved project, but we try to keep those to a minimum, and we ensure that we try to keep things nice and short, and again, so we're not being burdensome to the participants. The third thing is that the fun part. So with every activity that we field on a community, we'll always ask, where is the fun part? And it just might be a nice intro. It could be sharing back some results from the last survey. It could be one of the very cool interactive questions that we use that's visual and fun, and it feels a little bit more gamey than participating in typical research. But we like to make sure that with every activity there's something that's fun, and there's a bit of a hook for people to remain interested in and feel like it's participating in something that they can continue to enjoy. And the fourth is sharing, and this is, in my mind, the most important for sustaining an insight community. So in every activity, incorporate something that you can share back. If it's a sensitive research issue or a task, and it's not something that you're going to be able to share back, it could be very sensitive competitively, or it might be something that's just part of a much broader decision process. At least include something in the questionnaire that you're able to share back, because as we know, constant feedback is the fuel that keeps the community healthy. All right, so I guess in our mind, so when we're looking for staff and when we're trying to function as a team, we sort of think about the formula for success. And some people will think of us, actually even internally, some people will have the perspective that they work for a technology company, and some people are still very focused on the research training and the research attributes of Vision Critical. But in terms of a community manager, it's really all about being organized and being a little bit creative. There's very little market research knowledge that's required. I mean, for example, like I said, I've been here 5 years, and it wasn't until yesterday afternoon that I had a client ask me to help them figure out some weighting for a NatRep survey sample in Singapore. And I think that was a bit of a surprise for me, because it's very rarely that we're asked to engage on that type of level. So when we employ people, when we try to build the team, we look for initiative, we look for personality, and very much look for creativity, because I guess we need to create an environment where people are motivated to find the technology and the relationships that we have with our clients empower us to do that. So it's very much that type of environment that we're trying to build. And obviously, when we can think outside the box, and we can deliver something that's a little bit more creative and still able to deliver on our clients' objectives, then they're happy, and obviously we're happy as well. We go home on time. We don't lose any sleep over it. So I guess if we were to look at the upside and the downside, so I'm not going to go through and look at, okay, this is a day in the life, this is what my day looks like, because that's very, it's not the way that we function here. I guess you can't plan to have too much structure in your day. You can't plan too far ahead. But the upside is that we get all these very, very cool experiences. Like I said, we service clients in 11 markets now, and a part of that is going and seeing clients and getting close to their business and spending time with them. And from my perspective, that's very much the most interesting part of my role. Some of these pictures from, I guess, the last 6 months or so, and we've been to India and to China and to Macau, and it's not a typical day in the office. You sort of have to bring your computer, plug in, and connect wherever you can. Plan ahead. Just because you're in your client's city, it doesn't mean they're going to make any additional time for you. You have to make sure that you're on time, you're able to navigate to where they are, and who knows, there might even be cows on the road. Okay, so I think what I wanted to do now, so I think I wanted to focus on some of the more specific skills in terms of the things that we have to juggle. And so rather than looking at a typical day, these are components of a typical day, and we have to think about how we deal with these, and how each of them influences the way that our day goes. So I'm going to go through these one by one, and I kind of have a slide on each. And I think for Vision Critical and for my team, the most important one to focus on in the beginning is community management. So, like I said, we're a very different team than the research team. our focus is on community management, and that's, I guess, in our mind, the secret sauce for keeping a community engaged and keeping it very healthy. So in terms of the components of that program that we deliver, from top to bottom, I mean, we have a monthly dashboard report, which means the client always knows what's going on in the community, what some of the behaviour is, and some of the distinct elements that might make up a month. That, churn may have spiked. We may have seen a particularly high response rate to a survey. We may have had some interesting feedback come through the mailbox. All these kind of things go into making up our dashboard. We may have had a recruit source that was really effective and the community's exploded and gone bonkers in the last month with new members. All of these things we have to make sure that our client is aware of, and that's what we deliver with that dashboard report. Member newsletters, which is, in my mind, a very important component to sustaining a community long term. So this is typically the way that we would share back results, and we have a design team here and data visualization team that does a very, very good job of composing these kind of newsletters and making them very attractive to read and very fun for us to go and deploy. And I've got a couple of examples a little bit further down in this presentation. The restage refresh is a process that we will go through every sort of 18 months to 2 years, and that's just as when somebody comes into the community, we profile them, and all of those questions will eventually be out of date. And obviously technology moves on, business objectives move on, and sometimes we have to ask quite different types of questions. So that's the process in which we update the profiling questionnaire. We ask our members to come through and reprofile and update their information, and we also recruit a bunch of new members to the community so that it's kind of fresh in that regard and you're getting new perspectives. The fourth thing, and this is particularly when you're dealing in international markets, it's quite a complex thing, is incentives. And incentives doesn't always mean giving cash or cash for comments prizes or anything like that. Incentives can very often just be the way that we deliver our feedback, and for example, dealing with the clients in Australia, they can be quite fun, and they can ask questions that are completely unrelated to their business and to their research objectives. What are you doing for the long weekend? What's for the big game next week? Who's going to win, and why do you think that? These kind of things, which are quite market specific, they really haven't been effective in some of the more conservative markets like China, where people are typically quite busy, they're time poor, and they don't feel as if it's worthwhile participating if the questions that we're asking them aren't related to the community and what they've subscribed to. So we have to be quite creative in the way that we deal with them, and I think in markets like that, knowledge is very much, knowledge is power. So it could be things like facts or little sneak peeks as to what the organization is moving towards are much more effective incentives, because then they're recipients of information that they're not able to garner from anywhere else. So I think incentives are complex, and it can be the whole continuum from the intrinsic feedback to the types of prizes and rewards that we deliver. Very much varies by market, and we could do a whole separate presentation on incentives, but it's a big component of our job. The fifth thing is the community engagement plan, and this is making sure that there's always a plan in place. And we don't plan all that far ahead. It could be 3 months or it could be 6 months, but just making sure that we have a bit of a playbook and the client knows exactly what they can expect from us, so that if we get busy and if time kind of gets the better of us, then we have a reference and we know exactly what we need to do, and it's a much more efficient way of operating. The community health review, and this is a really nice thing that Vision Critical is able to provide to our clients, is a really deep dive report into the community and some of the behaviors that we're seeing, and it's something that we deliver every 6 months, and we all deliver that to our clients in person. So it's also a really nice relationship building exercise for us to sit and spend time planning and reviewing with our clients at least every 6 months. And the member satisfaction survey, which is, I think I have a slide on next, is also a really cool thing. And sorry, I'll move forward and then I'll drop back. So this is where we go in and we ask the members, okay, how is your experience? Rate your experience. We have all of the different attributes, the key attributes for the community, and we ask them to, why did you join? What did you hope for? Are we meeting your expectations? What could we improve on? And we make sure that we ask the community members this at least every year. And it's a way for us to get some very nice feedback. And I guess the chart that I have here is quite a nice matrix. It shows what's important and what we're performing well on versus what's less important and what we might be performing not so well on. But again, we always get a unique output for every client, and it's a nice way of letting the participants drive the way that we operate. Here's a picture of a couple of newsletters, and these are for 2 different clients, and they're fun, they're engaged, and we might only deliver these every 3 to 6 months, but we put a lot of effort into them to make sure that they're attractive, and we get very, very high open rates, typically 60% or above on our newsletters, and people want to know what's going on on the community, and what their insights are contributing to from a business perspective. All right, so in terms of looking at back at the multi-market view, and I've kind of got a bit of a convention with these next few slides in that I think the most important takeout is kind of highlighted here at the top. And with multilingual delivery, and the community communication has to seem authentic. It's quite new to us as a business, and I think it's probably new to a lot of businesses, is that there'll be a multilingual component in what we do. So from Vision Critical's perspective, we don't use Google Translate, and we don't half do it. And what we do is we invest quite heavily in the team that we have, and that we're bringing on board authentic language skills, and whether they be placed in the Sydney office and it's somebody that might relocate, or whether they be based in one of our other regional offices, we make sure that it's somebody that's in tune with the market that we'll be asking them to deliver in. Otherwise, you're sort of undermining the whole philosophy of the community. So like I said, it needs to be authentic, and you need to come across as having a good understanding, so that you can hold a genuine conversation between the businesses or the clients that you're representing and the participants on the community. Okay, the next thing, and this is something that we're learning on the go, is that software, being software, doesn't always behave in a consistent way in every market or even every situation. And the kinds of things that will affect the way that your software performs is the different browsers, the different operating systems, and even the different devices that the participants are using. So I guess it's something that it quite often takes you by surprise. And example, recently we kind of take for granted that emails can be delivered to domains such as Gmail and Hotmail, but then some of the more obscure domains and some of the ones that are proprietary to a specific country, whitelisting or building that domain reputation isn't always as easy as it is in some of these Western markets. And this is something that we're learning on the go and developing processes along the way. So I mean, a typical way, and like I said, we don't always see this coming. So how do we handle it? The first thing is we have a very, very good technical support team here, and they're located with us in the office. So as soon as we see anything that's a little bit strange, and it could be flagged up from a community manager, or it could be from a client, or it could even be from a participant, we drop everything and we have to engage technical support and focus on that issue right away. So first of all, we kind of determine the scale of the issue, and we'll inform the client if they aren't aware. So we're big believers in transparency, and we never try and pull the wool over someone's eyes if we see that there's a problem and it's going to have an impact on the community. Given that we're having conversations with thousands of people at any one time, we need to make sure that it's being addressed quickly so that we can minimize the impact of any errors or any unpredictable software performance. Then what we do is we diagnose the problem, and this is where we get quite creative, and we'll make sure that we have a Band-Aid in place as quickly as possible. Sometimes the Band-Aid is the solution, and it's quite easy to fix, and sometimes it's more temporary while we go in and we diagnose the root cause. but we have very nice software and things that can document everything, and what we use that as a reference for later on is that typically when we see something like this and our software performs in an unpredictable way, when we've found a solution and that solution has been put in place, we typically don't see that again. So it evolves very, very quickly, and with software as a service, I mean, it really is a continual evolution, and we've learned a lot in this last year, and I think we'll continue to learn. But what's best is, and what's reassuring for us as community managers, is knowing that when fixes are put in place, we don't have to worry about that problem ever happening again. Now the next thing is understanding, I guess, the intricacies of the different markets, and even though, like I said, we do build quite a multinational team, and it's very diverse. We're still sitting here in Sydney, and it's not to say that we always have our finger on the pulse with what's going on. Even things as simple as what are the public holidays, we need to make sure that we're aware of that, and we have them documented so that we feel like our clients could effectively feel as if we're just down the road. And one thing that I've learned, and I think is the most important thing to flag up here, is that being organised, having a meeting agenda, it really is a global requirement. There's no exceptions to this rule, and when we dial into a phone call or when we schedule a meeting with our client, we have to have an agenda in place regardless of where you are, because it helps direct the meeting, and it makes sure that there's never a moment where we've forgotten to cover something off. So some of the training and some of my personal development for the last year, which I think has taken me quite a long way, is primarily dispute handling and negotiation. So this is where we have to pick up the phone, we have to have those hard conversations, and it could be a result of the software, I'm referencing the last slide, the software not performing in a predictable way, or it could be something as simple as something's been flagged up in the monthly dashboard, and we need to find an explanation to our client as to why the response rates may have dropped, or why churn, even something as drastic as churn may be happening on the community, and we have to help them. We have to drop everything and help them try and find a solution. Geography and linguistics is we work in a very collaborative environment, so even though we don't have community managers dedicated to specific regions, but we have at least somebody in the team who will be quite familiar with that market, and in particular will have those language skills that are required to effectively deliver the community. And they help with the business communications, they help with the member communications, and obviously they help with translating and making sure that the activities that we're running on the community are genuine and authentic, as I kind of alluded to earlier on. So some of my personal observations, and this is purely what I've learned on the job, is that it's not as extreme as they'll tell you at university or as what the textbooks might say. They'll tell you, if you're going to a meeting in Malaysia, for example, or Indonesia, then don't wear the colour red, or be careful with the words that you select, and they'll give you specific examples. I don't think it's as drastic as that, and particularly we're living in a globalized age, and most of the end clients that we're working with were Western educated. But you still have to be considerate and make sure that you are familiar with the market, and some of the things that I think that really help is just having a good understanding of the geography and what the current events are in each of the markets you deal in, because it seems like you've done your research and you're a dedicated client service manager when you can have those types of conversations with your clients. So the meetings are very fun, the in-between bits aren't. I think this year I counted, I've been on 22 flights, and most of those were international, so having to go through custom lines and things like that, and often flying through the night. It's really not fun, so you need to make sure that when you're at the meeting, you bring your energy and you get the most out of it, because you don't see the clients across the region quite as often as you would see them in your own city, so you need to make sure you're really capitalizing on those face-to-face moments, because it really is king. In terms of your conduct in the meetings are shown outside of Australia and particularly outside of North America. It's often the things that you don't say. People are frantically taking notes, and you don't want to make a promise that you can't keep, and you by no means want to take the meeting on a tangent that you hadn't planned. So you have to be quite careful with the words that you choose and the things that you say. Appropriateness of lateness. I guess what I'm referencing here is that there's a bit of a continuum in terms of how early you must be, or even how late you're allowed to be in some of the markets like the Philippines, and particularly in somewhere like Jakarta where traffic's a real problem. It's acceptable to be a little bit late, and that's not to say that you can be, but I think it's to appreciate that if you're having a meeting, many of the attendees will be late. Too much food. I think that's a fairly typical observation across Asia, is that the meetings are very well catered, so you be careful. All right, so the next thing, and this is more of an internal thing, is that you're dealing also within the business, within Vision Critical, with a lot of different departments. And I guess my take up from here, and this goes for any software or even market research businesses, that you're only as good as your ops leader. So I think if you're exploring potential employers or different roles within the industry, you need to make that a key line of inquiry. I mean, good ops leaders, they ensure accountability, transparency, they ensure that you have solid systems and processes in place, and they make sure that the ops staff are motivated. I mean, I think ops is in a lot of cases the end of the line, and they have to deliver things. They're the ones that really determine the deadlines, and it could be it could be something like a web scanning exercise or a web development exercise, or it could be something more simple as developing an infographic or a little bit of HTML for a newsletter. But you need to be very clear with your ops people as to what the deadlines might be, and make sure that throughout the task you're staying in touch with them, and you're ensuring that any developments or any questions that they have, you're immediately able to address. And good ops leaders are very, very organized, and they'll challenge you as much as you challenge them. And I think it's like I said, it's a worthwhile line of inquiry. From my experience, I would never move into another business where the ops leaders really aren't keen. We have a guy here called Tony, and he really is, Big Tony is like the mafia, so he's got his finger in a lot of pies, and he's very, very in control, and we all have nothing but admiration for the way that he operates. So it's a big benefit. The next thing that I think is very important is finding effective ways to share your information with sales. When you've had a bit of experience and you've worked in a few markets, the sales guys know that, and they're obviously trying to build the business continually. So they'll ask you a lot of questions, they'll ask for a lot of case studies, they want a lot of materials that they're able to share. And the reason that I've called this point out is that sometimes the materials that you're sharing are very sensitive, and it's not something that can go to a prospect, and we have to be the gatekeepers of our clients' IP. I mean, they entrust us with that. And the other thing, I mean, it's quite inefficient if you're spending a lot of your time going to prospect meetings and having these discussions with sales. Then it takes a lot of the time away from from when you could be delivering community management to your own clients. So you need to make sure that there's systems in place and there's ways for you to effectively share information that's not sensitive, and that also doesn't take a whole lot of time out of your day. And then the next thing, and this is particularly for those that want to progress into senior roles, is that the most important component to be really comfortable with and familiar with is finance. And that just means familiarity with all the numbers and what generates revenue, and where that revenue is coming from, where your cost centers are, and being able to forecast that, because you want to hire new team members and you want to grow the team, then you need to be very comfortable, and you need to build those business cases, and that's what predictable revenue does. So if you have a good understanding of that, then you're always going to be one step ahead of the game. This is for those of you who are doing a lot of international travel, and people based in Sydney can very often be characterized with this, is that you always got to be planning your next trip. So keep your laptop charged. I mean, when you're on the flight, it's probably the most productive time that, speaking for myself, it can be the most productive time that I have. You're uninterrupted, you don't have emails coming in, and you can really get a lot of those materials out. An app that I can recommend is TripCase. So like I said, I think I've had 22 flights so far this year and haven't missed one. I haven't had to reschedule one. TripCase is a really cool app that you simply forward your itineraries as soon as you get them, and it will give you prompts, it will give you alerts if your flight changes or if your gate changes, and it helps you to be very, very organized. The next thing I should mention is the out of office. So these days, and like I said, we're working in very much a 24-hour environment. Your out of office is a courtesy, it's not an excuse. So you need to have an escalation point on there, and it could be your own mobile number, or if you know you're going to be on a long haul flight, then have somebody else's email address or phone number in there. But just because you're out of office on, it doesn't mean you can't address those questions that are coming in. So make sure that you continue to do that every day and multiple times a day, especially because people expect you to be connected these days. There's Starbucks, there's internet cafes. It's very rare to find a city or a location where you're not going to be able to access the internet. And then, like I sort of referenced earlier on, you've got to be organized. You don't expect clients to drop everything because you're in town. So you've got to respect their schedules and recognize that you're not a big part of their day. They've got a lot of other things on their plate, and you need to still, even though you've traveled a long way, make sure you respect their schedules. Service level expectations. So I think to work in a regional role, you've got to be prepared to work late and work from wherever you are. And this is when you're traveling. This is making sure you're organized and you have everything completed before you travel. And the other thing is you need to have quite a thick skin, so you don't take the criticism to heart. I found that the clients we work with in large corporations particularly, in places like Japan and China, are really exceptional people. They've got the best education, they're very, very organized, and you need to kind of meet them where they are, and their expectations are very, very high. So you need to ensure that you're delivering on those, and a lot of that is just over-communicating and making sure that you're keeping them as up-to-date on project progress as what they need to be and as what their senior stakeholders need to be. Because you need to appreciate they're not the end of the line. I'm going to try and move along a little bit quickly here. I'm running a little bit slower than I'd anticipated, but I just have a couple more slides but before we wrap up here, and I really want to make sure that we address the key takeouts. Okay, so this, if I look at the previous 5 years and the experience that I've gained, I guess, working out of the Vancouver office throughout North America, and then moving down here, and looking for some of the similarities and some of the differences. But if you want to have a successful career as a community manager, or someone who even works for an agency, or just has a technology business that's regionally focused, I think these are the key tips for success. So something that I will always do, and I would recommend, is check tomorrow's calendar the night before. So before you go to bed, before you have your dinner, make sure that you're fully aware of the meetings that you have the following day. And there's a couple of reasons for this. The first is that if there's something you don't feel prepared for, then you can very quickly do that, and you have time to ensure that the preparation isn't last minute. And the other thing is that if you're thinking about the meetings that you have the next day, and it's the analogy that people have in sports. If you're visualizing where you need to be and where you want to be, then naturally, even while you're sleeping or during your downtime, you're solving some of those problems, and your body's naturally preparing itself for what's ahead. The second is this is pretty simple, and I think most people have been bitten by this one before, and it's setting expectations that are reasonably exceedable. So if you know something's going to take 2 days, then let your client know that it'll take 2.5 or 3. I mean, you need to prepare for the worst, and you need to make sure that there's no drastic repercussions if you don't meet that initial timeline. And it's always better to over-deliver than it is to under-deliver or lapse on a timeline. The third one is pretty succinct, and it's always show up on time. So be where you plan to be, show up on time or slightly early. The fourth is to offer energy and enthusiasm, particularly on Mondays. People these days are all working long hours, and they're taking their work home with them, and people I find are getting quite uptight and quite stressed. So you need to be the one, and it's a breath of fresh air if you can be the one that can offer the energy and the enthusiasm when you're in a meeting, when you're in a team environment, whatever the case may be. Make sure that you're the one that's the spark, and you'll be recognized for that, and it's not a bad thing for your career. The fifth is getting to know your clients. That way you can better appreciate them, and you can understand what drives them, what motivates them. But don't overdo it. I mean, this was actually a lesson that I got from my hairdresser the other day. He said, he's seeing a lot of people, and he said, people are coming to me. People are coming to me for my expertise, and they're going to continue to come to me. And I don't have to know everything about them. I can remember their name. I can remember a few things, and we can have a very nice conversation. But it's not the best use of my capacity to remember everything about everybody. And he said, quite simply, is that you don't want to overdo that kind of thing. And it can also seem more genuine if you remember the right things, children's names, or if you remember a sports team that they might be interested in, or even that their children might play on. But don't overdo that kind of thing. And the sixth and the final thing is document and archive everything. And this is basically because a lot of the conversations you have, and particularly some of the tough ones, are over the phone, and it may be a creative brief or a creative revision, or it may be a difficult conversation or negotiation. And in those moments in particular, you should document everything and make sure you follow up. And it doesn't look like it's ass covering. If it's more, okay, thank you for the conversation, and here's the things that we discussed. Please validate that I didn't miss anything, and that your understanding is the same as mine. So I think that's the sixth, and that's a very important tip, is to ensure that you're documenting the conversations that you're having, whether it be via email or whether it be on your own business network. Right, so I think that about wraps everything up, and I know Ray's going to dial back in here, and there'll perhaps be some questions for me, but I hope everybody could take something out of that, and it could be a piece of advice or one of the stories. But I think that it's a very, very interesting role that I have here, and I feel very fortunate, and I know that the team here is quite an exceptional group, and I hope that this gives everybody, whether it be current clients or whether it be just market research enthusiasts, gives them a little bit of an appreciation on what the job entails. So I think I'll hand back over to Ray.